So on the back of my book, Are You a David? I don't know if you can see, but that's Goliath coming up behind one of our constitutional sheriffs. Okay. She's from Edwards County, Texas. She's a good constitutional sheriff, good friend. She's been to several of our conferences. She's been a speaker. She's very powerful, and you don't want to mess with her. And at the back of the book it says this, kind of explains the book. You, the patriotic, freedom-loving citizen. You, the local peace officer or police chief. You, the elected representative of the people. You, the county sheriff, must stand with faith, with the humility of a shepherd boy and the strength of a warrior, as David did against Goliath. This really is David versus Goliath. It is going to take some courage, but you can't do it if you're not educated. We talked about that at the very beginning. The enlightenment that I received because of the epiphany I received from that lady who I almost gave a ticket to. Now you need to be that lady, and you need to be the epiphany for your sheriffs and your public officials. Because if we don't get this moving right away, you already know what will happen. Okay, so now we're going to get finished with the decision. We're going to get into some other things that are going to knock your socks off. But I love Thomas Paine. Why do I love Thomas Paine? Because he actually inspired George Washington, especially at Valley Forge when they were thinking about going into Trenton to take on the Hessians and the British Army. An amazing story. Jennifer Long was a good person who worked for the IRS. I know that's an oxymoron. But she whistle-blew on them. And yes, thank God for people like her. And Joe Bannister and several others who blew the whistle on the IRS. The #1 criminal organization in America. Yes. The only competition they have is the mafia. And the U.S. DEA, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, was working and assigned to Bogota, Colombia. And while they were down there, all these agents decided that they would go ahead and have sex parties. Now, I'm sorry for those of you who are younger, but that's what happened. And this is on the front page of USA Today, March 27, 29 of 2015. And it talks about how the government report on DEA agents were down there breaking the law. Oh, forgot one key point. Guess who provided the ladies of the evening? The cartels. That supposedly they're supposed to be down there fighting. They actually took bribes from them in the form of prostitutes. Go ahead, guess how many of them were prosecuted? 0. How many of them were disciplined? 0. The only thing that happened is that the first lady who ever became director of the DEA resigned. That's it. Like it was her fault all those guys were doing that. Prosecute them, that's against the law. Have you ever heard of the crime bribery? Okay, and committing those crimes while you're on taxpayer dollars? That's all sorts of crimes. But no, we'll prosecute Amish farmers for not having a license for their milk. So, yeah. And I got to tell you about that. We've been working with the Amish nationwide, trying to defend them with their religious beliefs of not necessarily being licensed to do everything. They don't believe in doing that. A lot of them. Some do, most of them don't. And they just want to be left alone. So what is our job as police, sheriffs? Make sure they're left alone. And we've actually dealt with different sheriffs who have done that. Sheriff Brad Rogers in Elkhart County, Indiana, who now is running for county commissioner in Elkhart County, Indiana. Out of the last 25 years, the best constitutional sheriffs in the country were Sheriff Dave Mattis, Sheriff Brad Rogers, and Sheriff Nick Finch. And all of them stood. And every time a sheriff stands and does something like this, it's 100% that they win. 100%. And so the FDA was coming into Elkhart County and going after an Amish farmer and doing random checks, you know, like the IRS does. random checks, completely unconstitutional. They don't have any basis in law. They don't have any probable cause, even reasonable suspicion. They're just random auditing, okay, randomly checking. And the Amish farmer finally got tired of it, called the sheriff. Actually, he called me. He called me. I got a hold of the sheriff. Sheriff Brad Rogers and I have been really good friends since then. He told the FDA that if they came back in his county without duly signed warrants, due process, probable cause, and following the Constitution, he would arrest them. And then they threatened to arrest him. And then Sheriff Rogers and I developed a document to respond to them. 3 days later, the Amish farmer got a certified letter from the U.S. Marshal saying the whole thing had been dropped. And they haven't been back, and that was about 9 years ago. Okay? And Sheriff Rogers still speaks with me. I actually considered having him come to this one with me, but I thought, no, he's really busy with his campaign, and I'll put feelers out on this first, Michelle, right? And then we'll see how this goes to Northern California, and all up and down the California coast, as far as I'm concerned. I have Constitution, will travel, okay? So, but I bring up this about the IRS and about the DEA because they never follow the law. So why would your sheriff invite them into his county and then trust them inside his county to treat you properly? It will not happen. Okay. And, oh, I love this Thomas Paine again. What signifies it to me? That means, anybody know what that means? It means, what does it matter to me? What signifies it to me whether he who destroys my property and kills or threatens to kill me is a king or a common man, my countryman or not my countryman, whether it be done by an individual villain or many of them. If we reason to the root of things, we shall find no difference. Neither can any just cause be assigned why we should punish in the one case and pardon in the other. And isn't that just what we saw about the IRS and the DEA? And there's many more crimes the federal government commits all the time. It's so crazy. And I love Thomas Paine. Remember, he's the one that inspired Washington. It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. Although the states surrendered, mistake, we didn't surrender anything. What does the 10th Amendment say we did? The D word. We delegated to the new federal government. If you delegate something, you're the boss. If you delegate something, can you undelegate it? Sure, you're the boss. You can take it back. So we formed the new federal, don't forget that. The states formed the federal government, not the other way around. And we delegated them certain assignments. We can take them back. We just forgot about that. Why? Because they kept paying us all these federal grants. Where do they get the money for that? From the states. However, then he goes to this. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. This is where I actually wish I had a chalkboard, okay? So we can do the mathematical, the scientific, if you will, equation. The political scientific equation, if you will. That, okay, so Congress was not given all governmental powers, were they? Nope. This is right out of my decision, folks. And Scalia takes us through this political, scientific, mathematical equation. They don't have all governmental powers. What kind do they have? Only discrete enumerated ones. So they don't have all powers. They must stay within their powers, that the few that they have. And how do we keep it that way? What does it say? Which implication was rendered express. Rendered express by the 10th Amendment. Wow. So who's supposed to enforce the 10th Amendment? The federal government? The 10th Amendment protects state sovereignty. And the state sovereignty exists to protect the sovereignty of the individual, of the people. We don't care about state sovereignty. The state is a geographical boundary. We care about freedom. We care about individual sovereignty. That's a key component of all of this. Again, that's in your little $400,000 booklet that I gave to you. God. I know, isn't that something? Okay, the great innovation of this design is that our people would have, that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal. Get the next line, it's in red, it's beating heart red. Each protected from incursion by the other. What? All the other different governments are supposed to do what? Protect us from incursions of the other governments. Let's see, he clarifies that too. As Madison expressed it in the Federalist Papers, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. How many times do your stupid politicians say, oh, well, the supremacy clause gives it all to the federal government? No, it doesn't. It only gives it to them when they what? Act in pursuance to the Constitution. Otherwise, if they're outside the Constitution, they have no supremacy whatsoever. So the federal government, how much supremacy do they have? Well, they haven't followed the Constitution in decades. So they have very little. And they're given what kind of powers to begin with? Only discrete and enumerated. That means they're listed, enumerated, they're numbered. In the whole Constitution, they have right around 33 powers delegated to them. Yeah. Yeah. But how do they keep them? How do we keep it that way? Look at this. This separation of the two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Whoa. Just as the separation of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. Did you want to know when you came to this meeting today how to reduce the risk of abuse and tyranny? Yes. Just said it. Your state must act. Now, I know your state. Don't get me wrong. I know your state. Okay? How many sheriffs do you have that are willing to do that in their counties? Give me some county commissioners with them. And you can take back just what I said at the beginning. We take it back county by county, sheriff by sheriff. Hence, this is Federalist Paper 51. Hence, a double security. Now get this, folks. Read that on the screen if you can. Hence, a double security arises to the rights, and this is in your little booklet too. Okay? A double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each is controlled by itself. Any question as to whether or not the federal government will control itself? Any question as whether or not the state of California will control itself? So then who has to do it? The different governments. Is your county a different government? Is your city a different government? Is your sheriff in charge of a different government? Yes, and he promised you in sacred oath that he would protect you. Okay, so this is another one they said. The power of the federal government, this is right out of this decision, would be augmented immeasurably if it were able to impress it to its service and at no cost to itself, the police officers of the 50 states. In other words, it's just saying they don't have the power to do that. They don't. And that's what they did in the Brady Bill, trying to commandeer the sheriff for federal bidding. The federal government, we held, may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. Federal government doesn't, the state, California doesn't have to go along with the federal government on anything. But the money thing comes right back. And then, so the state should simply say, well, we're not playing that game anymore. We will be sending no money to Washington, D.C. anymore, including gasoline taxes or anything else. If your sheriff will not stand with you, you better move to a county that will, or you better get him educated or get one elected. I just don't have much time we have left to get all these. See, a sheriff standing right now doesn't have to wait for another election. You don't have to wait for another bill to be passed. It can happen right now, and it should be. Okay, and you've seen it in the papers. How many in California have woke up and told? I'll tell you what, Riverside Sheriff totally shocked me. I did not know he was going to do that, nor did I think that he was that far along educational-wise. Right now, we've been working on a thing, and I'm actually seeing hope in San Diego, which I said before, no way. But there's some signs happening in San Diego, and one is a good friend of mine running for county commissioner there. And his name, just so you need to know, his name is Steve Voss. He's very, very constitutional. But you see, if you're a different government, what are you supposed to be doing? Standing against Sacramento, standing against federal government. It doesn't matter where the abuse comes from. It doesn't matter if it's federal or state or Timbuktu. We stand against all injustices. That's what CSPOE stands for.
Can our mayor
Okay?
stand against our county?
Oh, of course. What did it say? Different governments stand against all abuses. It's our job. The ultimate goal here is what? That, and I'm quoting, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. All government is here to secure these rights. Which ones? Our God-given fundamental rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And my property. And my right to be left alone. It's all of them have that. You would hope that someone would be catching on by now. And that's what the CSPOA is. We're just a wake-up call, and we're educating, we're motivating. And will we list every single thing that you're concerned about? No. I don't have that much time. There's too many of them. What we do is we focus on these principles, and then we act accordingly. No one has the authority to force you to get a vaccination. No one. Government can only do what we unitedly can do. In other words, can we as neighbors, all of us right here are neighbors, okay? Can we get together and say, that dang Michelle, she needs a vaccination and we're going to force her to get it. And we're going to go do it. If we can't do it, government can't do it. Because they can only do what we consented to, or that we authorized. And in America, we the people authorize and delegate all authority. All power comes from us. Why we're a constitutional republic is because if I'm going to, it's not a democracy. That's a real key point. Thank you. Because in a constitutional republic, the one, I have to protect her right against all of you. Okay? You all, we voted and it was 99.9% that she has to get a vaccination. Oh, well, sorry, roll up your sleeve there and you're getting vaccinated. No, I have to stand next to her and I have to interpose. Come here. Ha! That's interposing and you're not getting near her. And she's just one. Otherwise, the sheriff would have had to get out of the way and let the mobs hang the suspect inside the jail. No, we protect the right of the individual. That's the key of being a constitutional republic. That's the key. Your key. Did you know that? Your key.
So
Thank you.
If we're doing this at our house, are we able to be in trouble for that?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh.
Are we in trouble for being here today?
I mean, well, they kind of say that. Like, if you have
You know why? I told my wife not to put this out. We're having this meeting. I told my wife not to put it out. Because I didn't want police showing up and saying, oh, you're not distancing. I've hugged about 10 of you.
So how do I know if a sheriff is a constitutional sheriff?
You go talk to him. That's our whole thing here.
There's no
We have on our site, we have a survey for every sheriff.
Okay.
You add to it any question you want, but I think we have 12 questions on there you need to ask your sheriff. Okay? But ask him your own. Go in there and say, are you a constitutional sheriff? He goes, well, I think so. Then you say, what if they try to force a vaccination on me? And he goes, well, they won't do that. Same thing they said what if they try to take my guns? Oh, they'll never do that. Ha ha ha. Okay? No, you can't look at what they're doing to us today and say they're not going to do that. They're already doing it, and a lot worse. Okay, sorry, nope. Sorry. Let me get through this. Then we'll see what we got going at the end. I promise most of your questions are going to be, but what are you mostly asking me? What if they do this? What? No, we can go through that all day long. Stick to the principles here. They can't do any of it to you lawfully. Okay? If they allow any of your rights to be abused, they are violating their oath. They're violating the purpose for which they're here. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among them. Okay? Let's keep going. And this is the order of the court. I'll let you read that on your own once you get to the decision. And this is Judge John Roll in the courtroom, because this is what I really think has happened far too often. We get involved in the statistical analysis of things. Oh, we're going to flatten the curve. Yeah. We got to have that statistic, don't we? Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? My rights are being sacrificed for your flattening the curve? That's a graph. It's a statistical analysis. So when I'm on the stand in Tucson in the district court, the attorney for the federal government starts giving all this evidence about the Brady Bill and how wonderful it was, and all the statistics about how many people have been denied guns and blah, blah, blah. And Judge Roll put his finger out and said, "Counselor, do not try to pretend in this courtroom that your statistical analysis equates to constitutionality." So if somebody tells you, look out many people it has helped. We've prevented the coronavirus from, whatever. If it's helping people, then it's constitutional and they have a right to do it? No. No, it has to be lawful. It has to be authorized. It has to be constitutional. It has to be with our consent. Who? Read the Declaration of Independence about that one. Now, this is Carl Mankey in Michigan, the 77-year-old barber, right? And so he took it to court, and he was fighting, and the dictator there lost. And this was in a court of law, and thank goodness. But he had militia members. He had all sorts of people standing against him. I've already talked to Shelley Luther in Dallas about how she kept her job and she went to prison. Well, she went to jail for a week, and then she got out in 2 days because people came to her aid. Somebody started waking up. It is incumbent on the courts to ensure decisions are made according to the rule of law, not hysteria. One hopes that this great principle, essential to any free society, including ours, will not itself become yet another casualty of COVID-19. Michigan Supreme Court 7-0. That means Democrats and Republicans alike on that court said 7-0 unanimously. That's an amazing principle. This shows that some people are starting to get this. I believe that when you go talk to your sheriff and he hears from a bunch of you, not all at the same time, you know, if the sheriff got 10 calls, he's going to say, I've been getting dozens of calls, hundreds of calls. He'll say that if he gets just 10. Imagine if he gets 100. Okay, you guys, all this whole thing is we've got work to do. We can't sit back on this. And I don't care what the issue is. I don't. How about food freedom on all these Amish farmers that I went around America drinking raw milk in protest on state capitol grounds? Drinking raw milk with my Amish friends. And the problem is I hate milk. I really do. No joke. Oh, I hate milk. You know what all milk tastes like to me? Like it's been sitting out on the counter for 3 days. That's all milk to me. But that milk, I will tell you, went down the easiest. Especially, I told every one of them, you better have that milk cold. Don't have me warm milk. You know? But raw milk does taste better. If there is such a thing. Okay.
Let me have those front seats. Y'all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats. Are you gonna move?
No.
If you don't give me that seat, I'm gonna have you arrested.
You may do that.
Yes, sir, I wonder.
Well, then you just do it. You got to exercise your powers and put her on.
All right, now I'm gonna need police backup.
So you know what happens next. 2 officers sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution arrest Rosa Parks for not giving her seat to a white man. Criminal complaint, charged, taken into jail, fingerprinted, photographed, booked into a cell, and then she got bailed out really quickly after that. Now, if I could have a volunteer from the audience, I'm going to show you how it should have played out. I'm not kidding you. This is exactly how it should have played out. How you doing? Darn good to see you. You're perfect for this part. Okay. Okay, so a constitutional sheriff. Somebody have been wondering, what will my constitutional sheriff do? How do I approach him? Go and ask him if he would have arrested Rosa Parks in December 1st, 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama. I was 3. You were 5. I just wanted people to know I wasn't the oldest person in the room. Okay, so.
See what happens when you give them personal information.
Okay, so when the call comes into dispatch, the sheriff happened to be there. And he says, I'll take that call. And he takes Deputy Smith with him. And they get on the bus, and they walk up to Rosa, and the sheriff is standing there, and he looks in her eyes, and something's starting to happen to the sheriff because her humility and her strength start to reach him, even before he talks to her. And he sits down next to her, and he reaches over and he shakes her hand. And he said, Mrs. Parks, I know this took a lot of courage for you. And it would be an honor for Deputy Smith and me to escort you home safely. Would you allow us to do that? Now, she wasn't really willing all that, oh goody. Is she a little bit suspicious of this? Of course she is. But she says, most of it's pretty well lit. I don't think the sheriff's going to do too much to me during that time. So she decides to risk it. She says, Sheriff, yeah, I'll go with you. And he goes, well, where's your stop? And she goes, 2 more stops up there on Elm Street. And so they get off together, and they're walking home, and there's a hamburger joint. And it says whites only. And the sheriff goes, hey, Mrs. Parks, do you think you need any hamburgers and sandwiches for your kids and family when you get home? It's kind of late now. She goes, yeah, that'd be nice. So they go into the all-white restaurant, and the sheriff makes them serve her order. And they do. You see the sheriff teaching people here? What do we do with stupid laws? We put them in the trash where they belong, and we get back to the principles of all men are created equal. And that's what we enforce. And of course, love. Empathy, love, compassion. Doing right. Keeping my oath. Ask your sheriff if he would have been the one to escort her home or to arrest her. Then why would he do the same today, or why wouldn't he do the same? Hang on a second, let me finish. And so, then when they're out of the restaurant, there's an all-white fountain. And this good sheriff goes, Rosa, why don't you make it 3 for 3? You did the bus, You did the restaurant. How about now the water fountain? And so, of course, she obliges and she drinks out of the all-white water fountain, teaching all the citizens what we do with stupid laws. And then they get to her home. Guess what? She got an earful from her husband. And if you guys watch the movie, the whole movie where this comes up, you'll see that that's what happens. He didn't want her doing this. They talked about it before. She did it before. What's the matter with you? You know? My dear friends, will we stand with the Rosa Parks today? Will we stand with our neighbors and friends? We must. This is liberty. This is what a true constitutional sheriff would do today. Whether it be your issue of forced vaccination, how about food freedom? You're talking about medical freedom? What about food freedom? I can't even choose what foods I eat. I can't take raw milk on my own accord. For God's sakes. Rosa? Thanks, you're a sweetheart. Here, I'll help you down. Doesn't it just really make you wonder why we don't get that part in the Declaration of Independence? All men are created equal. And don't try to play the woman thing there. It means all humankind. We all know what it means. We don't have to dissect that. Okay? And words have had different meanings over the years, and we know what that meant. That's not even an argument. Thank you for doing that. That was beautiful. Every time I do that, I look in the eyes of the person I'm doing it with, and I swear it's just absolute beautiful humility. And you're my sister. And okay, so what? Somebody's a little bit darker complected than me. So what? I don't care. And the CSPOA has stood against all injustice. And it doesn't matter where, or who, or what color, or what religion. It does not matter. If you're an American, we're going to stand with you. And we have, numerous times. And we all got to get that message, and you got to take that message to your sheriff. Oh my gosh. Badge versus the badge. That's going to happen sometimes, you know that? We're going to be standing against somebody else with a badge. That's what should have happened in Minneapolis when that officer's knee is in that man's neck. Those other three, I have said, if they don't do anything about it, they're charged with the same thing. Oh, they should have stopped it. Would have saved somebody's life if they had just stopped it instead of standing there watching. Cowards. But the thing of it is...
They were 2 days on the job. They were learning from that.
Yeah.
Well, as a human being, you know...
They're already through the police academy if they don't know any better by then, you know. But it's again, I don't care if they've been to the academy at all. What did we talk about a while ago? Passion and empathy and, oh my gosh, come on. Okay? So we've already had this happen lots of times. This was in Range magazine in 2003, where Sheriff Gary Amon in Owe County, Idaho, told the Bureau of Land Management, I almost said BLM. It's not even, different thing. Bureau of Land Management. He told them to get lost. And he said, you guys aren't to do any enforcement in my county. And then another sheriff in San Bernardino, California. He said the same thing, and he revoked all law enforcement authority from the BLM, from the federal government. And then they made up rules. He said, if they do anything in my county, they must check with me first. And that's exactly what Sheriff Jones did in Eureka, Nevada. He said the same thing. My goodness, folks, this is not rocket science. It's just liberty. And it's not that hard to figure out. And you don't have to ask courts what it is. Okay, all the sheriffs that have been standing for freedom, I'm going to show you real quickly their names here. But bottom line is, were they wrong? Another question to ask your sheriff when you go talk to him. All these sheriffs, you can look them up on the internet. Standing for freedom and against tyranny. Were they wrong? What's the sheriff's name in L.A.? Villanueva, that's right, thank you. Sheriff Villanueva. Were they wrong? Are all these other sheriffs standing for liberty in their oath of office and standing for their people? Are they wrong? Were they wrong? Call them and tell them they were wrong.
He stood up.
Villanueva didn't. Others, many others have. There they go, a long list, and this is not even half of them. Over the past, I just took every sheriff from the past 20 years. Most of them are just recently. Sheriff Palmer, Sheriff Rogers, sheriffs from Utah that has stopped the Obama gun control. It goes on to all sorts of different issues. The New York sheriff standing against the SAFE Act there, and Governor Cuomo threatened to remove him from office, and then he found out that he couldn't. And he literally came back to the sheriffs and, "Oh, come on, you guys, you know I was just kidding." Yeah, he can't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ooh, a lying politician. There's a new one. And I mean, you can't even keep up with all of these. And there's lots more. These are just a few I threw together. When we have lived under a pernicious power long enough, no matter how oppressive, we grow so accustomed to the yoke that its removal seems frightening, even wrong. You got to remember that's what you're dealing with, because you're going through decades of brainwashing, you know? So it's going to take work and it's going to take patience. And when asked if he considered himself a constitutional sheriff, San Juan County, Utah Sheriff Rick Eldridge replied, "I do. I thought every sheriff was supposed to be a constitutional sheriff. That's our job." See, when they start getting that, because I don't even think all of us get it yet, because we're so used to it being the other way. But now we're getting desperate, and so we're coming together at these meetings, and we want some solutions. There's not very many out there.
Reverend, with your permission, I'd like to make an announcement.
Young man, this is a house of God.
I understand that, Reverend. I apologize. The South Carolina militia is being called up. I'm here to enlist every man willing.
Son, we are here to pray for the souls of those men hanging outside.
Yes, pray for them. But honor them by taking up arms with us.
And bring more suffering to this town?
If King George can hang those men, our friends, he can hang any one of us.
Dan Scott, barely a week ago, I heard you rail for 2 hours about independence.
And?
Mr. Hardwick, how many times have I heard you speak of freedom at my father's table? Half the men in this church, including you, Father, and you, Reverend, are as ardent patriots as I. Will you now, when you are needed most, stop at only words? Is that the sort of men you are? I ask only that you act upon the beliefs of which you have so strongly spoken, and in which you so strongly believe.
Who's with us?
This is County Commissioner Dick Carver from Nye County, Nevada. Very good friend of mine. He and I were speaking at the time all across America, did lots of speeches together. And he's on the front cover of Time magazine, Don't Tread on Me. This was back in the 90s. This movement has been happening quite some time. He stood very strong. In fact, he opened a road that washed out in his county. He got up on his own bulldozer and opened the road with federal agents pointing guns at him, telling him to stop. 150 citizens got there with him. And the officers with their guns stood, he stopped, got off the bulldozer, went over and told the sheriff and the other people, deputies and the whole people, if they get in my way again, you either arrest them or shoot them. They got out of the way and he fixed the road. Whatever happened to Dick Carver? Did he go to jail? No, nothing happened. They fixed the road. I'm telling you, when you stand, and especially if you have the support of the people and a couple of deputies, a county commissioner, give me a constitutional county commissioner and a constitutional sheriff, constitutional commissioner plus county constitutional sheriff equals liberty.
This is a different kind of army. If you look back through history, you will see men fighting for pay, for women, for some other kind of loot. They fight for land, power. Because a king leads them, or just because they like killing. But we are here for something new. This has not happened much in the history of the world. We are an army out to set other men free.
I said that once, and a national organization said I was promoting violence. Because I said the sheriffs of America should be this army setting other people free. And I've never advocated violence in my life, yet Southern Poverty Law Center has named me on their domestic terrorists. In 20 years of law enforcement, in 20 years I never struck, hit, slapped, shot, kicked, hurt another human being. In 20 years. And they have the audacity to put me on their list of domestic terrorists. I mean, yeah. And from them it is. Judge Andrew Napolitano and I were on the same list. Yeah, and we shook hands on his program on Fox News. Yeah, exactly. Doug, what have you been doing? Yeah, I know. But amazingly, Chick-fil-A donates to them. Yeah, to Southern Poverty Law Center. Yeah. So we used to really go there a lot. We're not doing that anymore. And okay, now look at the Confederate side. Is there a way that both sides were right?
The government derives its power from the consent of the people. Every government, everywhere. Well, let me make this very plain to you, sir. We do not consent, and we will never consent. And what you've got to do is you've got to go back over there to your parliament, and you've got to make it very plain to them. You've got to tell them that what we're fighting for here is a freedom from what we consider to be the rule of a foreign power. I mean, that's all we want. That's what this war is all about.
Jim.
No. Now, we established this country in the first place with very strong state governments just for that very reason. I mean, let me put it to you this way. My home is in Virginia. The government of my home is home. Virginia would not allow itself to be ruled by some king over there in London, and it's not about to let itself be ruled by some president in Washington. Virginia, by God, sir, is going to be run by Virginians.
Now let's be very clear, just like he was. You already know me well enough, especially you. I would never support slavery of any kind, especially the kind they're shoving down our throats today, making us complete subjects to them, enslaving us with this ridiculous debt that we have. Debt is slavery. We've never consented to any of that. But I totally agree with the principle he was talking about. California should be run by Californians, not some strangers in Washington, D.C. Your counties out here should be run by your counties and not by some strangers in Sacramento. And that's the principle here. No matter where slavery would raise its ugly head, every facet of government has a job to stand against it. In fact, some people have called me on this, and I'm never going to back down from it. When John F. Kennedy sent troops to Alabama against Governor George Wallace, he was totally right. Why? Because it was a freedom issue. It was a liberty issue, and he was putting that to rest. And he was making sure that these black Americans got the education they wanted. It was their choice to go to the University of Alabama, not the governor's. And for him to stop somebody because of the color of their skin, JFK put an end to it. He sent some troops, nobody was hurt, the segregation was stopped, and heck, the Supreme Court endorsed segregation for like 55 years. We should have stopped that. The state should have stopped that way before then in Plessy versus Ferguson. The Supreme Court's wrong all the time. Roe v. Wade. Yeah. So, you know, folks, let's go on. We're coming close to the end here. Okay? Okay, yeah, you got to see this one too. Mayor Bryce Hamlin of Eager, Arizona. Population of about 7,000 or 8,000. About that? Or is it smaller? Could be smaller, but I think I'm pretty close there. I've been there a couple of times. What authority does the town of Eager or any other state or local government have to infringe on the rights of healthy, law-abiding citizens? My response from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has been that if we err, we will err on the side of freedom. What a great motto to take out there. What a great slogan to take out there. We will not allow this to happen. We will not let liberty yet become another casualty of COVID-19. My dear friends, some of you are trying to take pictures of these. We will have this tape available to you. You email me at sheriffmack@hotmail. And to help pay for all of this lovely fun we've had today, it'll cost you $20 for the link. Okay? And share it as you wish. Okay? But not one person get 20 and get one, then share it with everybody else. Okay? Okay? And not only, you know what? There's a lot more that we need from you than that $20. We want all of you to become a member of the CSPOA. Do you know that all of you can become a member? It's not just for sheriffs or former sheriffs or cops. It's a partnership with the people. Imagine now that we had 20 sheriffs and deputies and county commissioners here with us today. Imagine that. You see the nucleus that we would be starting there. And the next time, that's what we want. Okay? You guys are wonderful. I could look in your eyes and see how much you believe and how you're yearning for freedom. Statue of Liberty, can't wait till they tear that down because we're the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Mask. Okay? All right? And here it is. The last slide. Do you know what Washington's doing there? He's crossing the Delaware. And you know why he's crossing the Delaware? Because they just ran and were hiding from the British Army and ran into Valley Forge trying to regroup, get some food, get some of the men from some medicine so they'll quit dying of dysentery and starvation. You know what they were eating? Fire cakes. You know what fire cake is? Usually there's no fire to it at all. You can boil a little bit of water. It's just water and flour. Now you know why they were dying of dysentery. That's all they were eating. If they were lucky, they had that. And so Washington went back into Valley Forge. Some of the wives followed him around and were sewing clothes for them. Wasn't nearly enough. And then Washington brought in The American Crisis by Thomas Paine. And all the men were required to read that. These are times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and sunshine patriot will in the time of crisis shrink from the fight. But he who withstands it now deserves the love and admiration of both men and women. this got to them. So much so that they decided to heed Washington's admonition to go back across the Delaware, go into Trenton, and take on the Hessian mercenaries and the British Army that were there celebrating Christmas. Of course they were taken by surprise. Some said it's because they were drinking too much. Who would expect in the middle of a blizzard on Christmas night, December 25th, Christmas night, that anybody would attack? It's Christmas. It's a blizzard. And one captain put in his journal, as the men were hiking the 9 miles from when they got off the river back into Trenton, New Jersey, that some of the men were naked in every sense of the word, because they had taken off the last few rags they had and wrapped it around their feet. Another general wrote, actually captain, sorry, wrote that there were blood prints in the snow because the snow and ice got to their feet. They were bleeding. These men, because of Washington's leadership and the inspiration of Thomas Paine, that we get to read anytime we want now today. Just look it up on the internet. We put Thomas Paine in this presentation several times. Absolutely amazing that they could legislate anything to us, just like Washington, D.C. and Sacramento believe. When you share this with the people who can defend you, you should. And Washington, because the blizzard was so horrible, thought about turning back several times. But he felt that God was with him. And they went into Trenton, took them by surprise, early on the 26th of December, and they had the best Christmas they ever had. They took all their food, all their boots, all their clothes, all their provisions, all their horses, all their cannons, and because they learned one principle from George Washington's leadership. My dear friends, I see it in you today. I see your frustration. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've felt it. What did Washington teach us here? To pray? Yes, he did. You've seen the picture where he's kneeling next to his horse. But to do. And when your backs are to the wall, and when you've been placed in a corner by all the abuse and corrupt government, what time is it? It's time to attack. It's time to stand. It's time to fight. My dear friends, that is the message that we learned from one of the greatest leaders in world history, General George Washington. May we go and do likewise. I pray that we'll be true Davids answering the call to stand against Goliath. None of the founding fathers thought we were going to win that war. It looked impossible. And if they don't win that battle, they lose the war. Do you know how many times that happened during the Revolutionary War? If we lose just one more battle, it's all over. It happened about 20 times. And then if you look at the amazing thing that happened at the Battle of Yorktown, when Washington outsmarted Cornwallis. Amazing. We too, with the direction of God Almighty, can outsmart the enemy. Right is on our side. The Constitution's on our side. Now we just need to get a few more sheriffs and county commissioners and other people to stand with us. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Get that out to every person that works for you in government. We get freedom back tomorrow. May God bless you so much. I hope and pray He will.